What's poppin' YouTube? Bringing you 5 running backs you need for fantasy football in under 10 minutes. The first player is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going off the board as RB4 on Underdog. And let's not forget that last year, Jahmyr Gibbs, RB8 on a points per game basis, was 16.1 fantasy points per game, 11 total touchdowns in the 15 games that he played. Now, a lot of people are going to say he's going behind Bijan Robinson, CMC, and Breece Hall in the Underdog rankings. And you're going to say, well, those guys are all bell cows, Caleb. Jahmyr Gibbs shares the backfield with David Montgomery. But when Jahmyr Gibbs really fully started to get a hold on this backfield for the Detroit Lions, we're talking about him post getting injured, coming back in week 14, 17 fantasy points, 24 fantasy points, 24 fantasy points, 16, 21, 12. Like, he had some solid production, and he has the receiving upside. Now we're heading into year 2 when we're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs, who was more efficient on the ground. He was RB18 in snap share, RB34 in opportunity share, and even though he had all of that great metrics, the Detroit Lions ran the ball the 7th most times out of any team last year. There's a lot of room for improvement, but he also was the RB9 on reception, so he does have that reception type upside. Add in him going into year 2, I'm assuming that snap share gets up into like the 60 to 65% range, which is really where it started to cement itself towards the end of the season. I think all wheels are going to be up for Jahmyr Gibbs for this Detroit Lions offense. And if I'm in my redraft drafts and I'm able to get Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB1, I mean, you're talking getting him in the back end of the first round. I like that value, especially knowing that you're going to be able to double tap on a wide receiver at the back end. Makes me absolutely love some Jahmyr Gibbs. And he is my first must draft running back for 2024 fantasy football. My second must draft player for fantasy football is going to be Travis Etienne. And it's crazy to me that after the year that Travis Etienne just had last year on Underdog right now, Travis Etienne is going off the board as RB11, overall player 38. So Travis Etienne, I hear it. There was a little bit of an efficiency drop off at the end of last season when we're looking at Travis Etienne, but Travis Etienne still finished as the RB7 on a points per game basis with 16.6 fantasy points per game, 12 total touchdowns, 267 rushing attempts, 3.8 yards per carry. Wasn't the best, but he did have 58 receptions in the 17 games that he played. I know the big pull with Travis Etienne is that Doug Peterson has repeatedly said this offseason that they would like to get Tank Bigsby and or another running back involved. Now, they didn't take and or sign a big time free agent or draft another high end level running back. So Tank Bigsby, even though he did get the draft capital last year, getting that 3rd round draft capital, Travis Etienne put up a 74.3% snap share. So I know the argument against Travis Etienne is that if somehow he gets back into that 65, 66% snap share range, that the overall efficiency that he had wasn't great enough to really supplant to keep him up at the top end of the running back rankings. Now, I think a lot of that can be put into perspective with Travis Etienne, but really for me, even though he did have 12 total touchdowns, he was the RB6 on a touchdown share. So I think there's even a chance that he could improve that touchdown number. Like we said, RB7 on a fantasy points per game basis, also RB8 on an expected fantasy points per game basis, and he was the RB6 on routes run, meaning that he was out of the backfield, RB9 on yards per reception. Like, all the metrics with Travis Etienne scream good. I'm not worried about Tank Bigsby personally, and I just look at the guys that are ahead of him, like someone like a Devon, someone like a Kyron Williams, where you like those guys, but is their overall volume going to be there this season? I know a lot of people like Kyron Williams right now in their underdog drafts, in their redraft leagues. I just don't know where that's going to be towards season, especially with this injury news, especially with them drafting Blake Corum in the 3rd round, like some Travis Etienne here at the RB11. The 3rd player that you need in the running back ranks is going to be Rachaad White. Rachaad White slides in as the current RB14 on Underdog, going off the board around pick 54, going behind guys like James Cook and Isaiah Pacheco. I understand Isaiah Pacheco is playing in the Kansas City Chiefs offense. We think there's a lot of scoring opportunities. James Cook, clear running back 1 for the Buffalo Bills. Rachaad White did it last year, ladies and gentlemen. Rachaad White was the kind of guy that you want on your team. RB10 on a points per game basis with 15.8. I understand the receptions were high with 64. 3.6 yards per carry wasn't great, but he was on the field with a snap share of an RB4 with 77.4% on the field for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with an opportunity share of RB7 with 75.3% opportunity share. I understand this offense for the Tampa Bay doesn't look great. Did they improve their offensive line? Maybe a little bit. The offensive line was absolutely terrible last year. You still got Baker Mayfield who resigns. He is the check down king. You got Mike Evans. You got Chris Godwin. For me, this offense really hasn't changed, and I still think there's more juice to squeeze with Rachaad White, and I think the RB10 is in his range of outcomes to do again. And I think he can even get higher. I think RB6, RB7 is in his range of outcomes. So when I'm looking at him at underdog, you're able to get him at RB14. And I think RB14 is like his absolute floor behind guys like Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook. So let me know down below what you think of Rachaad White. I think you absolutely have to draft him at his current ADP. And I think if you do a little bit of a hero RB build where you get Rachaad White as your first running back, I wouldn't be hating on you. But if you get Rachaad White as your RB2, if you go, running back, 2 wide receivers, or 2 wide receivers, running back, getting Rachaad White in that 4th round feels absolutely great. My 4th running back that you need to have is going to be Javonte Williams. And Javonte Williams, I haven't really been on the bandwagon, whether it's dynasty, whether it's redraft, over the last 2 seasons. But we got Javonte Williams, who's coming into year 2 off that ACL tear. You got Bo Nix, who's going to be a rookie level quarterback. And you got Javonte Williams all the way down the underdog boards here. And Javonte Williams is currently sliding in at RB31, overall player 105 on underdog. Now I hear you. There's some guys ahead of him like a Trey Benson, a Raheem Mostert, James Conner, Tony Pollard. We got a bunch of older running backs that have gotten paid that we're assuming are going to get a high snap share. I just think the competition for Javonte Williams in this backfield, of course they draft Audric Estime. You still got McLaughlin in this backfield. But Javonte Williams last year on a snap share, RB32, he only had a 50% snap share. And honestly, the yards per carry was 3.6. It wasn't great. He was very inefficient on the ground. 11.2 fantasy points per game was the RB31. But 11.2 fantasy points per game, if we're looking at his rookie season, put up 12.1 fantasy points per game was the RB22. So I'm not saying over here that Javonte Williams is going to crack the top 10 this year. No, I'm not that crazy. What I'm saying is his current value, his current ADP is screaming to me that there is upside with him because the RB31 price tag that you have to pay, I think is his absolute floor in an offense that's going to be bad, that they're going to have to run the ball. Javonte Williams, give me that because I think that snap share, that 50% snap share, cool. Maybe it goes up to 55% this year. Maybe it goes up to 58, but that's enough for me to want to invest at Javonte Williams at his current price. You might be able to debate like in this kind of range. I do like this range on underdog a lot because you got Javonte Williams at RB31. I think Nick Chubb at RB32, even if he is coming off an ACL, it is a little bit scary. You have to have that year 1 coming off an ACL expectations for Nick Chubb. But then we move to my other guy on this list. We're moving to my 5th and final guy. It's going to be Devin Singletary for the New York Giants. And we're coming up here on time. I said 10 minutes. We're keeping it to 10 minutes. I've said Devin Singletary is just a jag, and I truly believe that. Just another guy is what Devin Singletary is. But put him on a Giants team that literally only has Malik Neighbors as the other competent offensive piece, and you have me intrigued, to say the least. I mean, you're looking at Devin Singletary last year on the Texans, 9.8 fantasy points per game was the RB36. 2022, 10.5 fantasy points per game was the RB30. 2021, RB24, 11.6 fantasy points per game. I hear you. Those offenses, when he was with the Houston Texans, when he's with the Buffalo Bills, are going to be better than the New York Giants offense that he is currently playing with today. But if he can keep that RB20 snap share, if he can keep a snap share in like the 60% range, if he can keep the carries in the top 20, I think we're talking about Devin Singletary as a guy that at value and at cost and underdog right now, I think you got to be drafting him, especially if you punted running back. A lot of teams, like we said, I think a lot of teams are not going robust RB anymore. We're really starting to shade towards the wide receivers, getting an elite level quarterback, getting an elite level tight end. So sometimes you got to take a shot on these guys in the RB30 range, and I think Devin Singletary could be your guy. So if you're excited for football season around the corner, if you like talking some fantasy football, drop me a like, drop me a subscribe if you haven't already. Big things on the rise this year. I'm super pumped to have you guys all back as we start to get this season rolling. Appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.